of our legal content marketing webinar series. My name's Helen and I'm a content marketing executive here at HitSearch. If you've missed the first two webinars of the series, you can download them both on our TV and radio page on our website. In this week's webinar, one of our directors, Andy Donaldson, will be talking about how to make the most of your on-site content. So hopefully you'll leave the webinar with a few tips to implement for your own website. Okay, so I'll hand you over to Andy now.
Thanks, Helen. Hi, everyone, and thanks for the regular attendees. I can see that a few people have been interested in the in webinar 1 and 2. Just to make you aware, you can download webinar 1 and 2 if you go to either the legal section of our website, or of course, if you just go to the TV and radio page, you can access the content via there. So just to recap, first webinar was largely to do with looking at the broader term content marketing and how it can impact law firms and really sort of how we use it with some of our experiences of working with a number of law firms across the UK. The second one was more focused on social media, so how does social media content play a part in your law firm's daily life, as it were, bearing in mind social, both organic social media and also paid for social media is generally, in our experience, quite new to the legal space. And of course, today what we're here to talk about really is looking at the on-site part of content, which might be a little what's the word, boring, if I could be so bold, but really one of the main areas, particularly bear in mind content marketing really is very closely tied into SEO practices. So we're thinking about trying to increase the visibility within search engines of a law firm's website, then content marketing is key to that, and particularly the on-site content. I'm sure if you work with a number of SEO providers, then they've been talking about on-site content and how to improve that. First of all, quick apologies. I've got a bit of a cold, a bit of man flu, so my voice is sounding a little bit nasally, so apologies for that, but we'll crack through. We're going to be a little bit shorter than some of the other webinars. Some of the points that we make are a little bit more sort of easy to grasp, so we've tried to keep the time down as much as we can. Okay. So again, like with our other webinars, we want to take on a little bit of a journey, although a little bit of a shorter journey here, and just sort of cover off some of the bases really of on-site content. I think the first point is a bit of an introduction. I think on-site content is quite a I guess sort of misunderstood part of the marketing mix. It's seen as fairly flat and fairly boring, but hopefully in the next few slides we'll try to bring to life a bit more what we class as on-site content and how that impacts some of the law firms that we work with. So essentially, what do we mean by it? So we've probably heard the phrase that content is king. So on-site content is largely any content in brackets, which I'll come on to in a second, that is positioned across your website. So that means anything from homepage content, navigational content, right through to your blog content, all of which we'll come on to shortly. And it also means not just text. So it can mean images, it can mean some really clever uses of more visual content. So really it covers quite a broad range. We tend to, from an SEO mindset, we tend to talk about on-site content being all the areas of law. So if, you know, from personal injury to a road traffic accident to serious injury, each of those category levels on a website, we want to start writing some on-site content to talk about personal injury, to talk about RTA, to talk about serious injury, whatever the spectrum of the legal sort of products, I guess, if that's the right phrase, that you work into or that your main focus as a law firm is, then we need some content on the site. We'll come on to how we can make that a bit more attractive, but essentially when we're talking about on-site content, we're talking about everything from the written text on category level pages, as we just discussed, to homepage right through to some blog areas. Any, as it says in the text there, any element or all of these elements can help your content, first of all, be found by the user, so somebody that's interested in finding out about an accident that they've had at work or an accident abroad, whatever the piece of content may be, but also we're interested in attracting search engines as well back into the mix. So that's those two facets of digital marketing is what we're trying to attract. A valid user that has, of course, because it's come from content and organic means, it's the lowest cost of acquiring that customer that could yield the highest possible value. And we're also very interested in search engines, bringing those onto the forefront as well. So that is on-site content, and content is indeed king. So let's look at some facts to start with. So blogs give websites 434% more indexed pages, and that was sourced to Content Plus. So blogs are a really huge part of any site, but particularly from the legal space, because it really allows us to pick on a topic, and a topic in brackets is of course keyword rich, so we can start to focus on a topic and try and become visible quite quickly with within the search results pages for your blog essentially. The blog is probably one of the first points that we come to, and we'll touch on the blog a bit more detail shortly. But certainly the most logical place to grow on-site content is a blog, and I guess, and again, it doesn't need to be text-based. It can be visual, it can be infographic, it can be all sorts of different styles. One tip here, just to sort of jump in with a tip straight away, ensure that your blog is linked to Google News directly. And I won't go into how you do that now. Drop me a note in the comments, and I'll follow up with you. Just give us your email address, and I'll follow up with you after how to do that. But our blog, for example, on our own website, as soon as we place an article on, Helen, that's on the call as well, when she places an article, or Matt is also in our content team, within about 8-9 minutes, it's visible in the Google News pages. And that's because our blog is built in a certain way that particularly Google, but other search engines are available, like to see and index frequently. So we've got several thousand pages on our blog content. I'm not suggesting that you will have that volume of content at the moment, but certainly that's where you need to go. So blogs are really important, and again, they need to be an organically growing part of your website. Not the most interesting, I guess, is the best way to think about it. It's just a needs must. Also in the B2C space, so B2C marketers use about 12 content marketing tactics. So one of which we've already discussed, which is social media and using that content. One of which we're discussing today, which is on-site content. We've also talked about 3 or 4 or maybe 5 tips in webinar 1 really that you should probably go back to and download if you haven't already, and just pick on some of those top 12 ones that we use for our law firms, or other law firms that we're studying if we've noticed they're using. Articles with images get 94% more views, and that's from Jeff Bullis. I'm sure people know the industry commentator Jeff Bullis. If not, just Google search him. He's a fairly well-known commentator from a search engine perspective and digital marketing more broadly. So try and think about, if you look at our blog as a good example, if I may say so, we've got a legal blog on our website, and we write tips and content and various other bits and pieces for the legal space. So have a look on that. We always try and lead or certainly include at some part of each article that may be 300, 400, 500 words long, an image, and the image is very much relating to the article essentially, and it's normally as far up on the blog as possible to draw attention. So, and it's normally quite a bold image as well. A relevant and bold image is quite key. So make sure that it isn't just 400 words of consonants and vowels. Essentially, it's got to try and engage visually first before someone is going to engage in terms of actually reading the content moving forward. And then lastly, the companies with active blogs receive 97% more leads, and again, that's from Content Plus. Interesting enough, active blogs, what does that mean? And we covered this off in webinar 1, I believe it was. And what we mean by active blogs is that in our own advice, because obviously we do it for ourselves and also for our legal space, legal clients in legal space, we recommend at least 2 blogs a week, if possible. Our own minimum, personally, is 5 blogs a week, if minimum if possible. If we can get towards 10, and that's probably the maximum that we would want to get out there. And the reason being is partly frequency, and second of all, and we'll come on to that in the webinar 4, which is trying to become an authority in a space. You can't become an authority. Let's say, for example, guys on the call today, if you're targeting a serious injury, you can't be a serious injury legal specialist if you're posting maybe 2 or 3 articles a month, or and if you think about 2 or 3 a year, you're looking at maybe 36, 40, maybe 50 articles a year, where somebody else in the space that is an authority in writing about serious injury, could be one of your competitors, might be doing that in a month. So naturally, search engines are going to be migrating towards your competitor because they're writing the volume that they've got. and possibly away from yourself. So try and make sure there's at least 2 to 3 a week really. So you're looking at somewhere between, let's say, ideally 12 if you can over a month, but certainly somewhere between minimum of 8 is what we would recommend, and the more the better. And also from a search engine point of view, the more articles you get out there, the more frequently your site will be indexed, and that can only be a good thing for Google to pick up different bits and pieces about your site that maybe it didn't know the last time it came to visit the site. So some quite compelling stats there, and essentially what it's saying is that on-site content, whether it's blog-based or what we call category level, so service side and right through to homepage, it's really interesting. And actually on-site content also refers to page titles, and it also refers to image tags, the real basic on-site technical work that I'd ask you to challenge all of your SEO agencies to say, look, what are we doing? What's our strategy page by page? What are we pushing in terms of our keywords? Because all of that needs to factor back into the on-site content and the sort of the mindset of building that and improving that across the site. Excuse me. So that's some facts just to sort of put things into context and frame what we're talking about and sort of tell you a little bit how important it is. So let's have a look at some competitors. I don't think looking down the call list we've actually got anybody from these on the line, but if we have, then great. It's only complimenting them. But let's have a look at some competitors. So who do we think are doing it well? So first of all, let's look at how they present it. So Gordon's solicitors, they're on the top right as an example. Presenting the content we've just discussed, try and lead with an image. Well, if you've got a blog, try and lead with an image and also tie in a navigation structure with it as well. I think what Gordon's do here is pretty good really, where they draw your attention to quite a large name and B&M Bargains that they obviously work with, and then they've got latest posts, they've got latest publications, they've got legal updates, they've got upcoming events. It just gives, we're talking about the user for a second, it gives the user an understanding that Gordon's is a big entity. It's an ongoing and it's a large concern, and they specialise in these areas. And obviously you'd have to read the posts to understand what those areas are, but certainly visually it's a really good way of representing content, particularly blog-based content in this example. The slider is on a repeat of 5 images as well. Now, certainly visually, as they are changing, it looks really nice on the site. So I'd advise anyone that's wants to have a look and find a bit more and see that move, and go to Gordon's, and we'll put the actual URL in the show notes as well. The other one is Erwin Mitchell, which is at the bottom there really, and this is just an example of filtering. So bear in mind, as I said, we've got 2,000 or 3,000 pages on our own website, and some of our clients we create maybe 5, 6, 7 articles a week for on some of our legal clients, and it gets clustered quite quickly. So how we've separated it off is in the 3 disciplines that we specialise in, which is the legal space, the fashion space, and the retail space. I guess legal and fashion and retail are very different, but that's kind of where our specialism lies. So we've separated them off initially by topic, I guess is the best way to think about it. And then from topic, then we can sort by date, we can sort by title, we can sort by a number of other areas. So have a little look at our site, and the particularly legal section in this case. Just have a look at how we separate that out. Search boxes, again, you can search here with the Erwin Mitchell site is a good way to do it. But there needs to be some thought process gone into, and what this slide's about is, from the Gordon's example, of making the blog particularly, or any on-site content, visually appealing. Don't hide content, don't stuff it into images or anything else that's naughty from an SEO point of view. Be proud of the content, make it interactive if possible, make it interesting and make it stand out, and also make it easy for people to find specific articles or specific topics that you've created historically, as well as the more recent ones. So hopefully, and I'm just put a note there, obviously don't copy what they've done here. They are, it works for them, it might not work for yourselves, so just be aware of that, but certainly take inspiration is the best way to think about it from these 2 guys that we feel are doing a reasonably good job at this. We've mentioned a few times that when we're talking about blog, instantly people default to thoughts of a 400-word article with a title and a load of text split into 3 or 4 paragraphs, maybe more. That's not what we just want to create. We do want to create those type of articles. They are great informative articles, and 400 words of text can be split up really quite nicely. Again, I'd advise you to look at our legal blog. Helen and Matt that create the content do a really good job of using imagery and splitting it up, creating it in an informal tone and dividing it with things like bullet points or paragraph spacing, or the way in which it's written in a more of a conversational tone. All of that can create something a bit more impressive from a blog content point of view than just a standard, I hate to use the word boring, but a standard boring blog post. And a good example here from Hill Dickinson, who've done some work with, excuse me, they are, in this example, they've provided a character in this calendar composition that they've done, and they've shared it on social media, and they've got a lot of engagement from it. And again, it's just not typically what you would get from a law firm, and they're really starting to sort of push the envelope really in terms of engaging with an audience, making it interesting to look at, and making it less legal in its tone, if that makes sense. I think typically law firms, in terms of their marketing tone particularly, have been very, this is who we are, we're experts at this, come and have a chat to us. Whereas I think the tone works much better if it's a softer approach. If law firms start to say, we're here if you need us, but I'm going to give you some content to help you get over your injury, to look at some areas that may be able to help you that might not be, in this example, Hill Dickinson, that may be saying, look, if you've had some emotional issues from a particular accident, these are the 3 websites that really may be able to help you. And what they're doing really is just positioning themselves, not necessarily in this example, but in some of the work that they do in some other law firms, not many, but some other law firms do well, which is sort of saying, look, we're here to help. We're the sort of people that can guide you through the difficult times that you may well be going through, but also get across that they're there when you need them, and here's where we are when you need us, sort of thing. That sort of tone seems to work particularly well, and I know that's how we engage with our specific list of clients, and that's the tone that we need to strike. And I think sometimes it's quite difficult to achieve that because it's a bit of a turn from the current partners. It's a turn in their mindset away from traditionally what they've done that they feel works, which has been largely through claims management companies, buying leads in and going down that sort of marketing route. Whereas we know a few years back that sort of diminished a little bit, certainly when the fixed fee system came in. So we need to just change the way in which we're thinking about things, essentially. So this is really one way that we can do it. And again, in webinar 2 we touched on social media, so I won't go into the use of social media for Hill Dickinson here, but definitely dive onto webinar 2. It's still up on our again on our legal section, the downloads, and it's also in our HitSearch TV and radio pages as well. So definitely have a little look at that. Just before we move on, I guess just jumping back to content, just before we jump on to the sort of trust and reinforcing trust issue. One phrase that we use in our content marketing is we want to make content evergreen. And what that means is if you've written engaging and written something that is interesting and of use to somebody somewhere, search engines will also find that of interest. And so let's not write for search engines, write for an audience. And if you get the audience creation and persona work correct, which we touched on in webinar 1, then search engine will follow. I think the mistake people make when trying to create evergreen content, i.e. content that's there forever, is they tend to write for search engines. They think, right, keywords, this is my keywords, personal injury lawyer, accident claim, these are my keywords and I want to focus on these keywords. So let's write a load of blogs about accident claims, because I know search engine will rate that. Not necessarily the right way to go about things, because ultimately a user has to read that at some stage, and if it's written for search engines, generally speaking, it's a lot of the time it is, I guess, quite wordy. It's focused on getting search engine spiders to the website, and so when people do read it, they're turned off, and ultimately it's not search engine that will make the inquiry, it's users. So make sure that we're writing something for somebody somewhere is the best way to do it, and that's how to truly get evergreen content. Hope that makes sense. Can you use your content to reinforce trust? Interesting point. So we created an ebook. Feel free to download it. Go onto our legal page under downloads and you can see it there. And as part of that, we did a survey with a legal services consumer panel, and we found that 50% of people trusted lawyers to tell them the truth. So reinforcing the trustability is quite, I guess, is really important as a law firm. So we wanted to just give you a bit of a four-step process, really, of how you reinforce trust. And this is something we come on to in more detail in webinar 4, but for now, there's a few points to get your teeth into. So when you're creating content, keep it consistent. So what we tend to do when we're creating content is we have an overall content plan, kind of makes sense, and what we do is we share that with as many different parties within the law firms that we work with as possible and get their buy-in, so that everyone that's creating content almost follows a brand Bible, if that makes sense, or at least a content guide. Because what you don't want is an agency like ourselves or yourself creating content that's, you know, engaging, that's focused on a user, it's targeting a persona really accurately. We're getting loads of good quality people to the site, search engines love it, and then someone posts a tweet that is completely different in tone. Because what will happen is search engines index all of the social media, of course, as well, and social signals are a big part of the natural organic algorithm, so the SEO algorithm. So what we're trying to achieve really is a single tone across the entire business. It's quite difficult to do, because if you think typically how marketing directors of law firms have done is they've got 2 or 3 partners in commercial to write posts each month. They've got 2 or 3 marketing people. They've got a couple of sales people that might be writing it. They've got one of the senior partners who does a commentary on a weekly basis. And so the typical content comes from 3, 4, 5 different sources with 3 or 4 or 5 different tones. And the idea being is that when users read any of those, they need to feel like they're coming from the same company. If not, they get confused. So first point is really keep it consistent. This is an interesting one, educate. So typically what we try and do is generally speaking, in the serious injury part of the spectrum, we write more technically focused or legally focused jargon to people in the serious injury space, of spinal injuries or head or neck or brain injuries. And the reason being is that because a lot of the time, people that we're interested in engaging with have been through a medical process before they want to make a claim or want to get some assistance off a law firm. Whereas with potentially maybe something like a whiplash, so on the lower value PI cases, fixed fee, generally speaking, they don't necessarily need to have been to hospital to have gone and got, you know, a consultant to say, yeah, you've got whiplash, there's a form I'll sign, off you go to insurance company and tell them you've got whiplash. So the serious injury cases tend to have had a hospital stay at some stage where medical professionals are talking to them about the broken leg being a broken fibula tibia, or that they've got some kind of particularly, you know, muscle condition now that has a particular technical term. So when we're thinking about our personas and who we're writing for and why, let's just try and understand that if they've been exposed to legal jargon or medical jargon particularly, then fine, let's talk to them about that. But if we're trying to target people that may not understand that they have a claim to be made, for example, but have been in the serious injury space, talking to them with the legal jargon and medical terminology will do nothing. What we need to do is try and educate them about the injury space, but use not simple language, but use more language that makes the article interesting to read for everybody, regardless of whether they know what a particular medical term for an injury is or isn't, essentially. And the other thing as well is when you start to talk in legal jargon, in this example of medical jargon, there tends to be a bit of nervousness created by the personas that you want to engage with. So people have had an accident, feel nervous about listening to a law firm talk in legal speak. They essentially want an arm around the shoulder, and if you can create content that puts an arm around the shoulder that educates without putting people off, whether it's legal jargon or medical terminology or whatever it may be, then you are more likely to win the hearts and minds of those people rather than alienating them because they're not quite sure whether they've got the injury that you're talking about or not, as the case may be. So things like we've mentioned at the bottom there, think about adding frequently asked questions to your site. So just, you know, anything that crops up in the daily work, just make a mental note or write down on a piece of paper next to your computer, and then once a week upload to a frequently asked questions page, which can be part of your blog. So again, it's indexable by Google and so on, and other search engines are available. And that can add as organic content. That is also content, doesn't need to be again, typical blog-based content, frequent asked question content is perfectly viable. And then it positions you as a trustworthy source, and that's really where you want to be. You want to be that arm around the shoulder when people need you most. Invest in training. So what we mean is customer service training. So if you've got content that is arm around the shoulder, and when they pick up the phone, it's back to the straight-laced, being careful not to offend anybody, straight-laced, direct approach that maybe you would expect from a law firm maybe, that probably won't work either. So it's certainly assisting people with multiple ways to engage. So a live chat feature is a great example. And then also training people to answer the phones just to say, look, people that are calling up have got some issues, whether it's from an accident or ongoing accident or ongoing claim. So customer service, in our experience in law firms, needs to be the best it can possibly be. Because one of those phone calls that comes through today, tomorrow, next week or the week after could be a case that's been ongoing for 2 or 3 years. Another law firm has made a mess of it for whatever reason, and it comes to your door, and the first person that picks up the phone with someone with a fairly detailed medical history, a medical issue from an accident at work maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and if the first thing they get is somebody that doesn't want to be at work and they can't be bothered, they've had a bad morning at home or whatever it may be, then it doesn't necessarily fill that person full of confidence. So customer service training, we always try and push law firms into giving the people that answer the phone some customer service training, and again, bring them into the loop. So let them know what content we're creating and why, what the tone is, so that they know when people come up that they've been exposed to that, and then they can replicate that verbally over the phone, as it were. And according to Business Zone, 24% of UK customers have stopped doing business with a company in the last 6 months due to a bad customer experience. So it kind of reinforces what I've just said. And then finally, to reinforce trust, client testimonials are a great way, while you've got your arm around somebody and saying, we can help you, is to say, we can help you, and we've also helped these people. They're exactly the same as you, and this is how we've done it. And according to eConsultancy, 61% of the customers read online reviews before making a purchase decision. I know I do, regardless of whether it's buying a car, a holiday, a new pen, whatever it may be. If you're parting with a certain amount of money, or you're parting with a certain amount of personal information, i.e. somebody that's had an accident, they want to feel like that, again, you've got, their arms are around them, and also that you know what you're doing, that you've done something similar for other people, because they don't want to be going around 3 or 4 law firms necessarily giving them all the details and telling them their life's woes, as it were. So again, the training for customer service is key, but also while you've got them, while you're creating trust and you've got them onto the website, stick your arm around them and let them know everything's okay, and this is what we've done for other people. It definitely doesn't have to be boring. Hopefully what's come across is that there are many other ways to have content, create it, split it up. So in this next couple of slides, we just want to give you some ideas of other companies that are doing it quite well in various different ways. One thing just to mention, that according to HubSpot, which is a system that we use, a visual piece of content is processed a massive 60,000 times quicker than a simple text-based piece of content, just to reinforce what we've been looking at. So some example here. So instead of having a block of solid text in your About Us, and this is something that I know myself and Helen are developing at the moment for our own website, just have a little think about something more intriguing. So look at a timeline. So the example here, we've just looked at Stuart's Law as an example, and just reinforcing the firm's history, going back to what we've just mentioned earlier on about, making people feel comfortable, putting an arm around them, showing them the experience, demonstrating the history of the law firm and how you've had successes right dating back to 1990 is a great way to put those big law arms around the people that are going to essentially generate some fees for you, assuming the case is accepted and won. Images split this up really nicely. It's great having the idea of a timeline, okay, great, but if it's just listed 1990 and then a paragraph, 1991 to 1999, a paragraph, 2000, a paragraph, it doesn't work. But the splitting of right justified text, left image, left justified text, right image, all the way down, just gives a nice flow to the content. And it makes it interesting for someone to just to scan through. They may only pick up on some of it. The challenge that you've got with having a large body of text is that people read the first sentence and leave if they're not interested. With visually broken up pieces of content, people are more likely to scan through it and pick out relevant bits and pieces, largely picked out by the image. So obviously the picture next to 2000 there of what looks like one of the partners, which is a managing partner. People want to look at that. They're interested in other human beings. They're interested in pictures of the officers. They're interested in awards that they've won, people that they've worked with. So these almost call-out images are, excuse me, are what's seen more engaging than the actual text that goes with it and the snippets. And then what you can do then, of course, if people are more interested, you can make some of these images here hyperlinked. So, 1990 in the text, the image itself can be hyperlinked to a more detailed page if people are interested. But this just sort of lifts things out of the bag a little bit. Again, it doesn't necessarily from a news section. So BP Collins highlights here that in terms of where they split up their blog, you can see here that their articles are filtered into press coverages, newsletters, cases, general news and other articles. So you've got a lot of different types of content. So where we would say we're going to split up fashion, retail and legal, and then within legal we're going to have different sort of sections of areas. They're saying, okay, you're interested in our content, you can look at some firm-based insights, so insight about the practice, what we do, employment law insights, so obviously they're targeting some employment law personas, that's what they're interested in, and also real estate. And then they're saying, look, if you like any of the above, when you click through and read these sections, why don't you subscribe to our newsletters? Which again, if somebody's going through a more detailed claim process, then they're going to want to keep in touch because you've got them, you've engaged them, why not get their details and keep them in touch with what you created and what you're writing about. So again, two really nice examples here by Stuart's Law, just splitting up their history, and here in terms of BP Collins, just splitting up some of their blog articles in a nice category. And then again, going back to this, just again, it's picked out by the images. Probably could have done better with the images, maybe just thought a bit more about, what is firm insight? Is that the best possible image to depict firm insight? Possibly not, but the idea being is that it brings your attention to it, and that's better than nothing. So just on the 34 minutes mark, so we want to keep this a little bit shorter, but the idea being is that in webinar 3, really, we're just reinforcing the fact that content really for the law firm is king, and getting it right is so important to making sure that we're generating new leads which are of high quality. We're not necessarily interested in producing thousands of leads that, and having to sift through them and working out which ones are good quality, which ones aren't. What we're interested in is just generating fewer high value cases. And what I mean by that is I don't necessarily mean that they're all serious injury. It depends on the type of content you're creating. But if we're going down the fixed fee route and we want to generate a volume of those, they are good quality regardless of whether they're high fee earning or not, the case may be. But the goal is let's use content, particularly on-site content in this example, social media content in the last example, and general content as a whole, particularly off-site content in webinar 1, to drive high quality leads through to your law firm. And then lastly, so appreciate you listening. Lastly, if anything has piqued your interest, drop me some messages in the chat. I'm going to bring Helen in to the equation in a second. She got some questions I think that came through some channels from various existing clients or new clients. But thanks for listening. And what we're doing is, if you're interested in any areas, just pick up the phone, give us a call, and we'll chat you through and help you out as much as we can. We are, if you want to, more formally, we're offering a free 3-month content plan or content analysis, content marketing analysis of your current content plan. If you've already got an agency, you just think, you know what, these guys seem to know what they're talking about. I wouldn't mind them having a look at my plan, what the current agency are suggesting. Then feel free to let us know. We'll do that for free. Obviously, in terms of a free 3-month content plan, we'd have to deliver the plan within a reasonable time frame. Obviously, we're not going to give you 6 months worth of content for nothing, but certainly the initial plan and guidance we're happy to do just with a conversation. So either drop us a note in the chat, or when we circulate these to everyone after the call, just reply and let us know. Let us know if it's of interest. So I'm going to bring Helen in now. Are you there, Helen?
Yeah. I am.
Okay. Any questions that you've dug up, as it were?
Yeah, there's two come through Twitter. The first one is, would you say filtering my blog is a priority? Will it help improve the performance of my content pieces?
Interesting question. What it will do is, I think from search engine's point of view, it won't make as big an impact as the user point of view. And the reason being is that the way in which Google indexes a website is it will index every single page very quickly, and so a structure may help it somewhat to find information that you want it to find, as it were, but it will get less annoyed less quickly, if that makes sense, than if a human is looking at the blog and can't find their way through it. All they're interested in is employment law, and they've got to read through 500 articles on personal injury before they get to an employment law one. They would have disappeared a long time ago. So will it make, I think the question there is, will it make an impact in terms of the search engines? Yet, if it's filtered, yes it will, but it will make more of an impact to the amount of engagement you get from customers, so or from potential claimants, based on the filtering, because they'll find it easy to find the information that they want and then engage with you as a law firm. Do you think that answered the question, Ellen?
Yep. Okay, the second one is, we only promote case news and legal industry news. Should we be adopting advice pieces also?
Advice pieces. I guess going back to webinar one, it depends on the persona really that you're targeting. I guess if you are interested in a certain type of, and we always talk about content being as part of a funnel. So if you're finding people that are just at the very start of looking, that have a claim and looking for a law firm to help them, maybe the advice pieces should be more geared at that particular person that's part of the funnel, because that will tell them and get across quite quickly how successful you've been for other people, and this is what you need to do, you know, and the advice and the how-to type approach is the best for that part of the funnel. If someone, as I mentioned before, has been through a hospitalization process and has a more serious injury and knows all of the medical terms, you're better creating content that's more specific for that level of audience, that's a bit further around the buying cycle, if that's the right phrase, or further down the content funnel. So I suppose the answer to that is yes, advice pieces will help, but it depends on which part of the content funnel and the process or the cycle that your person that wants to make a claim or has a claim is at, if that makes sense. Okay. Anything else, Helen? Is it loitering around the web?
No, that's it. No, that's the two questions we've had through.
Cool. Okay. Nothing on chat, I don't think. Looking at the chat, no. Okay. So just lastly to say thanks very much for attending. There is one final webinar in the Legal Content Marketing webinar series, which is webinar 4, of course. We'll also send out, if you go onto the legal site, you can see if you go to the download section, or if you go to HitSearch TV and Radio, on that section you can see when the date and the time of that next webinar. Please feel free to register. Even though you registered for this webinar, you won't be registered for the next one, because we're almost treating them as 4 separate webinars, because some people might want more help with a certain element of their content marketing, so we did it that way. So let me know via registering for that if you're interested. You can find that link on the HitSearch TV and Radio page. So I hope you found this useful. It's been great sharing some of our knowledge with you. Any questions, please do reply when we send out the email with the slides contained from this webinar a little bit later on this afternoon. But for now, thanks very much for attending.